Cape schools will reopen for the 2022 academic year on the 19th. It's following extended closure due to COVID-19 lockdown regulations. Well, let's take you to the departmental HOD in the province, and that is Dr. Naledi Mbude. Dr. Mbude, good evening to you. Thanks for your time tonight. So, of course, the coastal schools have a reprieve of about a week to get their house in order before they reopen as well. Let's talk about what you are expecting in as far as the readiness of your schools is.
Thank you very much. In terms of readiness, there are certain indicators that do indicate that schools are ready. One of them is the fact that the placement and admissions have been done because we started the previous year for them. We do sometimes have that problem where parents, because of parental choice, they either move their jobs at the beginning of the year or they want a particular preference. So the issue of learner admissions, particularly around Nelson Mandela Bay District and BCM, Buffalo City Municipality, there is usually an upsurge of people changing jobs or wanting to have a particular school. But because we are discussing with the parents and offering them alternative schools, because of the number of classrooms that are available in some of our schools, that's what we do try to do at this time of the year. So the second issue is the issue of the readiness of teachers to return to school, mainly focusing on the grade progression of learners from one grade to the other, with the identification of what it is that they have attained. The other one is the issue of learner-teacher support material. You would know that the province, about 4 years ago, procured LTSM to about $1 billion. There is a 3-year life cycle of our textbooks, but the top-ups that we ordered in the province, these are the ones that we are experiencing a slow kind of start, because by the time we asked for an additional budget from Provincial Treasury, it was approved from the funds that are spent in the other departments. But because we've already started the process with the stationery, we are at about 60% of deliveries, mainly because we are targeting those who would grade 12 and other grades because of the reduced baseline in the whole country and in the Department of Education particularly. The other one for us is the issue of scholar transport. We have had problems or challenges around this one because of the reduced budget of the Department of Transport. So the number of learners that we carried in the previous year, we are unable to carry to the total because of that reduction in budget. But we are talking to the local suppliers and transporters around these areas, and also want to see whether learners can't, in the meantime, make sure that they join schools in the locality, because the issue of budgets in government is a big issue for us. The last one, of course, is the issue of school safety. Our schools get vandalized during a holiday season because we are having a strong collaboration, partnership with the various departments, particularly safety, making sure that as we come back, our schools are appropriate in terms of safety. The issue of the disasters has also affected us, with about 84 schools today because of the bad weather also that happened yesterday. The number was about 78, and now it's moving up to 84 today. With the bad weather coming this weekend, there will be more. So we have sent our work inspectors. Our schools have been assessed by quantity surveyors, and contractors will be on site on the 24th because of the procurement process, but we've also been hit by disasters.
So it's quite a lot that you have on your plate. Let me begin with the textbooks. So you say about 60% have been delivered of the top-up. So let's talk more whole scale. As you wait for the delivery of the rest of the textbooks, what does that mean, and which grades are the ones that are going to be affected by this delay?
Let me just correct that again. Textbooks, in terms of, I just said that we did procure about 1 billion of textbooks about 4 years ago. So the top-ups are for those learners who don't return and textbooks. Remember that the life cycle of textbooks is about 3 years. Now we have a 98% retrieval rate in the province. So our schools do have textbooks where in all our important areas, but we are saying that it is stationery that has been delivered now, up to 60%. The issue of textbooks, because the approval of the extra funding for the department was done around the 20th, because the province was looking for money everywhere. remember that the reduced budget is a national problem all over. This is where we are concerned, because at the time that you get the money to actually do it, but because we have a 98% retrieval policy, all our schools have workbooks across the subject. So there is no subject that's not going to be taught because of a top-up that is not going to arrive at a particular time. There are textbooks from the previous years because the cycle is 3 years, and also each and every subject has a workbook. So no subject is sitting without a DBE, a workbook. So children are going to be able to start to work from day one.
So you have textbooks, but you don't have stationery?
It is the stationery that I was indicating that we are still continuing with the deliveries, because we had to start late with the procurement because of the issue of budgeting that the Treasury found. But because we are sitting now at 60%, and we are hoping that by the end of next week, all our schools will have. What we are doing normally, if, for instance, each child received 5 packs of pencils, making sure that as children will arrive to school at school on the 19th, instead of getting the 5 for one child, because the deliveries are continuing, teachers have a responsibility to ensure that each child has a stationery to start with. But all children will have their workbooks because it has already been delivered before the end of the academic year of 2021.
All right, so there'll be a delay then in the delivery of stationery to some schools. Let's talk about the issue of scholar transport, because already the COVID-19 pandemic has disenfranchised so many learners because we've had a system of rotational learning. Now, when scholar transport is withdrawn for those learners that clearly need it the most, what is the department expecting them to do?
The issue of scholar transport is also affected sometimes by the preferences of parents, which is a problem sometimes, because they would prefer a particular subject choice which is not available in a particular area. But one of the most important things about scholar transport is the fact that with the reduction of budget across the country, you are going to be unable, as we have seen now, that the Department of Transport can only afford a particular budget. That's a problem that government has right now. What we have done is to cluster those schools that are big schools, we call them mega schools, so that we reduce the number of children who will require scholar transport. In other instances, we are making sure that our telematics approach, where learners can access remote education, but the identification of which learners and the troubleshooting of which learners are affected and where they are affected is important. We are ensuring that our grade 12 class, which is very important, all grades are important in the system, but those who will write the exit grades, grade 6, 3, 6, 9, and 12, are the grades that we are making sure that our strategy of ensuring we know, because sometimes learners change schools mid-year, and sometimes they change schools in the beginning of the year, and sometimes they come from other provinces at this time of the year, which presents a problem. But this week is for that troubleshooting. Where is that problem the most as a challenge? And also the fact that we have to contend with the fact that learners can't all be ferried because of the reduction of the budget from the Department of Transport. So it's really a national problem, but our responsibility is to ensure that as we get the troubleshooting, which ones are most affected, then the migrating of schools and ensuring that we have remote learning that happens through our ICT strategy is what we are going to be engaging in.
So Dr. Mbude, one of the difficulties is the fact that, you know, even last year, we were still getting stories out of the Eastern Cape done by our reporter Malungelo Boy of learners who still had to cross rivers to be able to easily access schools. So on the one hand, I hear what you're saying about the preferences of parents, but the reality is when we talk about those that are most disenfranchised in your province, there are still many who to date have not been given the kind of access to schools that includes scholar transport. So when you cut back on such a service, are you not further disenfranchising those that are at the lower end of the spectrum?
You will remember that the prerogative of the Department of Education is not to build roads. So we are not a department that builds roads. We can't build bridges for children to cross them. The only access that we have as a department that we must ensure is that we open school doors for children to learn. That's very, very important. Now, the second part is that it's not the cutting back of the Department of Education for children not to come in, but the issue of transport, of the budget of the Department of Transport, which is the department that manages that whole area. When government takes money away for the social grants, the 300 rands for COVID-19 relief, the vaccinations, that is where that money is coming from. So we understand why that happens. But at the same time, it does have an effect on the fact that we have to now make sure we cut back on those things that are education related, which is the reality of the country.
But realistically, do you have the kind of infrastructure where young learners who are in rural Eastern Cape villages will be able to have access to remote learning, should they be among those that are affected by the withdrawal of the scholar transport?
One of the most important programs that we have in the department was to roll out ICT throughout the province. Each teacher in the Eastern Cape has a laptop. Each teacher has offline and online material. But at the same time, we have a general problem in some of our remote areas of connectivity, which is not what we can provide as a department. It is a problem that
So you don't have the infrastructure. You don't have the infrastructure to ensure that all learners who are in the areas that have low connectivity would be able to still be part of the schooling program. And yet, these learners could very well be among those who no longer have the opportunity to go to school. What kind of fate does that leave these young learners?
Can I finish my sentence, please?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I was explaining to you that each learner has a workbook, and the workbook has activities in it for educators to reach out, and learners will have a program. We have radio programs because the department has a range of activities. Remember, even if there were roads, there was COVID, and learners couldn't go to school, they still did remote learning. So it's not going to be the first time that we have that kind of a challenge in the system. But what I'm trying to portray to you is that it is not what we can, there's nothing that we can do as this department if there is no road, if there is a problem with the budget in the Department of Transport. What we can do are the activities that I'm just pointing out to you, that the radio program, it's timed at a particular time. We buy slots in radio so that they can get through others if they don't have a connectivity. The workbook is structured in such a way that each day a learner has access to education. So other ways and alternative ways are there in the system, and they are programmed so that if it's a number of days, for instance, like now we are trying to sort out the clustering of schools, making sure they go to the mega schools. That's what we are doing. But each workbook is designed in such a way that there are daily activities for children to do. And also the radio programs are slotted so that we can reach learners wherever they are, because remote learning really requires that. This is not the first time that we are facing that. The issue of COVID-19 taught us at that time valuable lessons of how to deliver curriculum when learners are away from school. So even if we didn't have a program in the Eastern Cape, a problem with roads, we were still able to cover up and to recover that time where learners were away from school because of these. So these are the lessons that we learned, and these are the programs that we engage in, precisely because we can't reach everyone every time.
Dr. Mbude, ultimately, you're also sitting now with a possibility of the South African Human Rights Commission investigating your department, particularly because there's been this complaint laid over the delay of the supply of stationery. It's one of many complaints that have come before the South African Human Rights Commission over the past 10 years, if we can put it as such, about the state of education in your province. What do you have to say about that?
One of the dangers of having a single story is how a single story is peddled. That's one thing. We have massive number of learners in the Eastern Cape making it through because of making sure that as we experience challenges, which are historic, by the way, they don't only come with 10 years, they've been here for many, many years. So turning around a department like this one has been because of the collective inputs by our stakeholders, by our role players, by departmental officials, by parents and everyone in the province. Now, the narrative that goes out every time there is a complaint and not balancing it with the work that goes on in the province is really sometimes disappointing. But I am saying to you that despite the challenges that are in the province, there's a lot of good work that happens in the province. So as we get complaints and challenges, we have a customer care line where people can complain to us about those things. And that is why our response time, and we have a toll-free line for people to report if there's anything that they are not happy with. And it's always going to happen that there is something that people are not happy about. But our first prerogative is making sure that as complaints come, as there are those issues that come up, we respond with speed to them. But having a single story is something that is very dangerous for our society.
Dr. Naledi Mbude, let's leave it there for tonight. She's the Eastern Cape Department of Education HOD.